So Deni Avdija is a really interesting player to me because he has, maybe more so than any other player in this draft, very explicit strengths and weaknesses, and depending on which one of those two ends up being more prominent in the NBA, it'll determine how good he ends up being. And you can say that about every prospect, but I feel like with Deni, it goes a level beyond what it typically would. And before I start talking about Deni's fit with a particular team, I figure it makes sense to just talk about Deni and his skill set a little bit. His best trait is his playmaking. The guy passes like a point guard in a lot of ways for his size. I mean, he's 6'9", with a 6'9" wingspan. You imagine he can play small forward and power forward in the NBA. And his ball handling, while it's probably not good enough right now to be a point forward, you'd think with time and development, he can get to that point. And even right now, if you go dive into some of his highlights, he's pretty okay in the pick and roll. He's comfortable enough attacking a screen and making the next play, whether it's keeping his dribble alive so then he can dump it off to a big man or throw it to a shooter in the corner. Where he is at 19 with his size as a playmaker, I think by the time he's, let's say, in the third or fourth year of his rookie contract with whoever ends up drafting him, I could picture him being a really good passer, somebody who can give you 5, 6 plus assists a game. And given his size, I think we could also see him do it out of the post. You know, the Warriors have done that with Draymond. We've seen Kevin Love do that. We've seen Marc Gasol do that as well. I think Deni could have some of that. I don't know how much of a threat he's going to be in the post, and that could hurt his chances there a little bit, but I think a team could have a lot of success with running some action around Deni, having him moving off the ball a little bit, especially early on in his career while he develops more as a passer, or as more of a ball handler, I should say. And then eventually you can have him just running high screen 7 to 10 times a game or whatever it may be. But one thing about that is his burst off the dribble and just his general athleticism. You could argue it's not good enough to have him really run the show on offense. I don't know how many fouls he's going to draw. I mean, he's a pretty slim dude. He's going to have to gain some weight. I don't know if he's going to be able to body defenders out of the way like that. Now, I should say, even with his slim frame, Deni is very willing to attack the basket and finish inside. I don't think he's going to be afraid to go to the rim as far as how effective he's going to be. I think that's still going to come down to how much weight he can gain. He might not be able to just beat guys off the dribble consistently enough, so he's going to need pick and rolls, or he's going to have to really, really progress in his ball handling and just be super crafty with his moves to get into the paint. But of course, another part about being a playmaker is you got to have at least somewhat of a respectable jump shot. You got to be able to hit pull-ups because teams are going to drop on pick and rolls on you, that sort of thing. And Deni's shooting, his percentages are not good, okay? Especially his free throws. And as we know, free throw percentage is usually a pretty good indicator of how good a shooter a guy is going to be. And he's in the 50s on his international free throw percentages. He might have ticked 60 at one point, but it doesn't look great. That being said, his form on catch and shoots is pretty good. It seems textbook enough. Maybe it's a step too slow, but besides that, everything seems to be where it is, and you would hope that that could be a sign that he could figure it out. I mean, his three-point percentages are not horrible. He was at 32% on 57 threes attempted in the Euro League the past 2 years. I'm pretty sure he played in other leagues. I can't find those, but there's something there at least for his catch-and-shoot threes. I mean, if Lonzo could get to, what was Lonzo at, 38% on 6 a game or so, then I think anybody can at least become a respectable shooter. Now, again, in terms of Deni's playmaking, he's going to have to develop floaters and pull-up jumpers, and I don't know if that is going to come as easy for him. The catch-and-shoots I could picture, but I think he's going to have to make a lot of progress on pull-ups, and I think it's fair to think that he will never be good enough at those to be a really, really awesome player. So if you want to be pessimistic about Deni, you could say, well, he can pass, but he's not a good enough ball handler to really use that passing, And even if he does develop his ball handling, his shooting is never going to be good enough to where defenders are going to stick to him like that. And he'll just be in this awkward spot of like an Evan Turner type of guy where he needs the ball to be successful, but he's not talented enough to have your offense be really, really good when he has the ball, which then means he could be a sixth man rotation guy, potentially barely playing, depending on where he ends up. But there are other things about his game. His cutting is very good. Pretty simple. I don't know how else to put it. The guy likes to cut to the basket. His team defense is very good as well. Rotations and all that. I don't know how much of a rim protector he'll be just because he's not a crazy good athlete, but he is 6'9", and you'd think, if anything, if he plays power forward and he's willing to collapse on the guys driving to the rim, he could be a bit of a difference maker around the basket. His one-on-one defense is not as good as his team defense. If I was going to make a player comparison before we finally start talking about the ideal team for the guy, I feel like, Nicholas Batum, if his shooting takes off a little bit, because Batum in Portland, what was he, like 15 points, 7 rebounds, 5-6 assists? I feel like Deni could be that. I would love to say that he could be like a Joe Ingles sort of playmaker at small forward, but Ingles is such a better shooter than Deni, I don't think I can go there. I feel like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander could be an optimistic comparison for Deni, but Denny is also going to have to get way better at free throws for that to be valid. So anyway, we finally get to the teams. I mean, Chicago's the easy pick, right? The Bulls need more playmaking. They're loaded at the guard positions. Their small forward position, it's kind of weird because Otto Porter would be their ideal 3, but he's been hurt, and sometimes injuries can just kind of push you out of the picture. And Deni could give them a lot of what they could need. I mean, he could run some stuff with Markkanen. It would be interesting to see if Deni could run stuff with Levine. I don't know if they could do that, but, Billy Donovan is at least, he's way better than Jim Boylan, so he could probably think of something there. And it would give Deni the shooting around him that I think he's going to need. I feel like it's going to be awkward if Deni ends up on a team where there's a couple of non-shooters. So, for example, let's say the Knicks end up trading up, which I don't think they want Deni. But if they did and they drafted Deni, that would be really awkward, unless the Knicks had a hell of an offseason and signed, a point guard who could shoot and all that stuff. I think Atlanta would be interesting with Deni. I would allow Trey to play off the ball, which I think would be good for him and that team. Now, you could argue that that would give the Hawks too many wing players competing for minutes, but if you think Deni is better than all their other ones, then you do it anyway. In the case of Cleveland, I don't really think Cleveland should be worrying about fit. I mean, you could argue none of these teams should be worrying about fit outside of the Warriors, but with Cleveland especially, even if they think, can Garland and Deni play together, I don't think you should care about that. If you think Deni is the guy, then you go with it. And for what it's worth, I mean, Sexton can shoot, Kevin Love can shoot. Yeah, you're going to have a center who can't shoot, but most teams are going to have that too. So there might be a world in which Deni in Cleveland makes sense, especially if Cleveland signed a DJ Augustine type of point guard, If we think about the teams in the top 3, we'll talk about the Warriors, because there's a chance they trade down. There's a chance the Wolves trade down. In the case of the Warriors, I mean, if Deni was there, it would probably allow him to progress at a pretty good rate. I don't think there would be a lot of pressure on him right away. And of course, the Warriors have a bunch of off-ball movement, and they've got the shooters that could space the floor out there for Deni. So that could be interesting. And his good team defense is something I think the Warriors would prioritize. His cutting would also fit in really well with them. Would the Wolves pick Deni if they end up trading down? I think it'd be kind of interesting, but D'Lo wants to run a bunch of pick and rolls. Towns wants to post up. I just don't know if there'd be enough possessions for Deni to be involved. I feel like it'd be a lot of him just standing in the corner watching everything happen. Now, maybe Ryan Saunders is good enough to figure that sort of thing out. I don't know. I feel like we're going to really find out how good he is this season. Would Charlotte go with Deni? I mean, they are pretty loaded at the forward positions, and the one spot they need is the center spot. It's pretty obvious. But is it not worth asking how they really feel about Miles Bridges? I think the only thing that Bridges does at an above-average level is rebound. So maybe Deni would actually be a good pick for them. I don't know. Because this draft is so weird, I guess there's a chance Deni could fall to around number 7 or so. Would he be a good fit in Detroit? Yes, if they got a point guard who can shoot. I don't know if Deni with D Rose would really work out. Let's say if he fell to the Wizards at number 9, would they actually pick him? I mean, they already have Troy Brown Jr., they do have Rui. They need to get better defensively, which Deni can help, but Okongwu can help out a lot more than that. Who knows if he'd be available when the Wizards would be picking. But there's better defenders than Deni as well. There's Okoro, there's Vassell, Halliburton could end up being a better defender, so I don't know. The Wizards are kind of interesting. Should they get a playmaker next to John Wall and Beal? Should they just get another shooter? That's an interesting one. My gut tells me they wouldn't draft Deni. If he fell all the way to number 10, would Phoenix pick him? They've got a lot of forwards, so I could picture that one being a little bit of a logjam. If Deni falls to the Spurs at number 11, which I don't think is going to happen, but it's a weird draft, then they should definitely draft him, no questions asked. But yeah, if I had to rank my favorite team for Deni, it would be the Bulls. It's such an easy fit. The shooting's around him, they're loaded at guard, they need passing, but it's never a guarantee. There's a lot of wings in the draft. If it's not going to be the Bulls, I do think Atlanta is kind of cool. Now, I know Hawks fans love the hell out of Cam Reddish. I'm not really on that train, I'm sorry. I would be more excited about Deni than DeAndre Hunter, Herter, Reddish. But you still need to play those guys and hope that one of them ends up popping a little bit. And if you drafted Deni, there could just be too much of that one type of guy, because the Hawks are basically just trying to fill in 2 positions, 2 guard and small forward right now. I mean, yeah, there's definitely potential with Deni at the 4. I think DeAndre Hunter can play some power forward as well. It would also give them another tall defender, which they of course need around Trey. There's a chance they still end up trading out of the draft for a win now player, whatever that means. So yeah, man, that's it. I think Deni is very interesting. Oh, and by the way, I did Mandalorian episode 2 of season 2 on the second channel. You can find that in the comment section. I was not exactly a fan of the episode, to give you a little preview.